Good morning.
Good morning.
How is everybody?
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. All right, just gonna hit admit here. We've got a few more folks coming in. Hey, Connie, quick question. When does the Elevate curriculum kick off? Are you there yet? We'll get started here in just one more minute. Oh, there she is. She's back. You guys are quiet today.
I woke up and my back was so stiff, so I'm on a little walk at the same time. But it's so beautiful. All the there's some very, very stunning plants out here.
Braving the heat.
Yeah, there's like a little cloud coverage covering me to protect me, so I got lucky. But yeah.
All right, we'll just get started. So a couple of things. I know that some of you joined yesterday's webinar with Nielsen. So to follow that up, they're offering, again, free data to you all. So one of their staff members on the ground here in Austin, Will Gearer, he will be at CPG Homeroom and actually pulling data and then helping you, kind of walking through that data with you and helping you understand that data. So if you are wanting that, I highly suggest attending CPG Homeroom on Monday, and I'll drop that link in the chat so you have that info. And then Madhu, one of our fellows, will actually be helping to facilitate that, so that'll be fun. And then Super Coffee will be providing some coffee that day as well. Better Bites Bakery will also be providing some little breakfast snacks. So that'll be a great event. And I am very excited to be bringing on our guests today. They, over and over, as I'm talking to you all, as I'm getting your feedback, as I'm looking at, your needs, one of the biggest things that I see people really asking for help around scaling themselves, kind of finding more time, being more, finding more productivity and everything that you're doing. And so a big part of that is really understanding, priorities that are related to the goals that you have, right? And so Shayna Dunitz from Blue Sky Partners is here today. She's a consultant with Blue Sky Partners, and Shayna's been working with founders and startups for over a decade, and she's really helped scale a lot of operations. And so she's a great ally for you all, and Blue Sky also has a ton of resources available to you. So really excited to connect you with her today. So with that intro, I'll just go ahead and hand it over to Shayna.
Awesome. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Am I able to share my screen? Okay, let's see. All right, I've got a slide deck here. It's pretty bare bones. I like to do more talking than reading off slides. Okay, are we good? Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Great. So today, this is going to be a somewhat brief presentation. I'm not going to do a whole lot of talking. I want to make it interactive, and then I want to have plenty of time to answer individual questions and see how I can help y'all afterwards. But I'll do a brief introduction of me. We'll talk about goals. We'll talk about making decisions. We'll talk about time management, and then how all of those things come together. So as Katrina said, my name is Shayna. I am a consultant with Blue Sky Partners, which is an operational consulting firm based here in Austin. And essentially we help businesses grow and scale. And so that looks like a lot of different things depending on what the organization needs. But whether that is helping someone hire a new team member, whether that is helping them understand what their goal should be for the next 18 months based on the financial runway they have, whether that is standing up their sales department, we get right in there with folks and help them do what they need to do to increase their impact. I have been working with startups, with founders for pretty much my entire career. I've been working in startups for my entire career. I've never worked at a large company. So I definitely have a bias towards small teams, working lean, and getting shit done. And so that is a little bit about me. I had to put that in the agenda because I always forget to introduce myself when I do presentations. I think part of that comes from being from New York, born and raised, and so I just kind of jump into things. But I've been in Austin for about 7 years now, so I'm kind of learning to slow it down. As I said, this will be interactive. So if you feel comfortable, feel free to turn your camera on. Of course, you don't have to. If you are, you just don't feel comfortable, that's totally fine. I will ask for feedback and ask questions. You can just kind of unmute yourself and jump right in. So I first want to start off by talking about goals, and would just love to hear from all of you. What are some of your current goals? And this could be a personal goal. This could be a professional development goal. This could be the goal of your business. But would just love to know, what are some of the things y'all are working towards?
Y'all know I'll start calling on you, so.
I'll go. I'm looking to develop myself as a founder. So starting there, like pitching to investors and accelerator programs. So that's one. And of course, for the business, I do want to 2x our subscription model. Oh, sorry. Context. I do body care products. I'm in the beauty industry and mainly e-commerce right now. So kind of developing our digital presence there to encourage more subscription.
Awesome. Anybody else want to share?
Good morning. I'm Naisha. I'm also in the beauty space. I have a natural skincare line. And one of my goals is mostly professional development related, but I know that it will benefit my business and me as a founder. I'm working on my project management certification, learning how to delegate tasks and having people help me out to accomplish some of my big goals. So working on getting that certification and then eventually bringing someone on to help me with day-to-day business operations.
Awesome. I love that. Anybody else want to share?
Hi, I'm Jordan.
Oh, I just really want to make a big difference in this climate matter, and really like is actually good for ourselves and our environment and everything. So that's like the overarching goal. Very broad, I know.
Awesome. And then Jordan, I believe you were jumping in.
Yeah, so I have Frank's Nut Milks. We make organic, fresh, raw almond cashew milks. And my main goal right now is really kind of distribution, operations, scaling without going just kind of the regular, the most common way of just processing and going to a co-packer and shipping it that way, trying to find a way to keep the integrity of a raw, fresh product and still being able to scale.
Awesome.
Looking to be challenging, but I'm here for it.
So it sounds like we've got a lot of goals around scaling and growth and kind of taking things to the next step. And so I'd love to know from any of you that just spoke and shared your goal, or from anyone else that didn't, how do you set goals? So how do you identify what needs to be done, and how do you get from I need to do this thing to this is my goal statement?
Honestly, I just make a list so far. By the way, I'm McKenna. I know I didn't do the intro, but that's like the main thing. I just have like a spreadsheet or just a list in a document, and that's how I go through it.
Awesome. Anybody else do anything different?
I kind of do things quarterly. So I'm like, what do I want to be or do in 3 months, 6 months, a year? I kind of do it measuring based on time. I don't know if that's good or not.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a great way to do it. And especially because sometimes when you say, okay, my goal is to scale my business, what on earth does that even mean, right? Like, what does scaling look like? How do we want to scale it? When do we want to do this by? And so when we're able to kind of put it into at least a time frame, that helps give us one piece of the puzzle. And so we know we can say, okay, what is feasible within 3 months towards scaling my business?
Right.
I think that's great. Anybody else want to share how they set their goals? Okay.
Yeah, I would say mine are not necessarily sophisticated, but at lots of times the goals kind of just happen because it's what is necessary to take the next step. And I've kind of jumped in and always just kind of trusted kind of my gut and what I think is the next step. And so then kind of seeing what I think is going to be next and then kind of maneuvering the goal around it. So it's kind of backwards and maybe not always extremely efficient, but so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? When you're, and I think a lot of y'all are solo founders, so you have maybe one person working with you. And so it's hard when everything is on you and you have to figure out what is the next step for distribution? What is the next step for products? What is the next step for marketing? What is the next step for operations? What is the next step for finance? And like doing all of that on your own. And so I think that there is a level of trusting your gut that maybe it's not talked about as much when we talk about goal setting. But I think that as entrepreneurs, there is, and to be quite frank, it looks like we have a lot of women here, not totally all women, but a lot of women here. There is a level of trusting our gut that is very valid and is very true and honest. And I think one of the things as a founder that's important is to kind of build up that muscle of trusting yourself and finding a balance between taking advice from folks, learning from mentors, reading, doing all of this research, and also just having an instinct of what is best for you and your business. And so while that shouldn't be the only way you set goals, personally, I think that that should absolutely come into play. And sometimes you'll be wrong, and that's okay. But I think there definitely is a part of goal setting that's a very valid portion of, for sure. And so my next question around goals, so we had some people who they have a big Google document, some people have spreadsheets, there's project management tools, but I would love to know how you track or measure your progress towards your goals. Because it's one thing to say, okay, in 3 months, I want to do X, in 6 months, I want to do Y, in 9 months, Z. But what sometimes happens is we set goals and then they just kind of languish out there in the netherworlds. And so I'd love to hear from anybody about how you actually are tracking or measuring your progress towards your goals. And it's okay to say, I actually maybe am not.
I
Hi,
can
this is
say for
Shubha.
sure. I'm not. Sorry, go ahead, Shuba.
Sorry. I mean, I think in terms of goal setting, I don't really have issues in terms of goal settings because it's almost like, okay, I want to raise like 500, K in like 3 months. So what am I going to do to get there, right? But mostly for me, at least in my experience, it's not been about my goal setting. It's about, how other people respond to it. So I can hardly get to my goal if like 10 people that I figured I should be meeting and talking about and pitching to do not really want to align with me, right? So it's almost like your goal setting bars just keep shifting all the time because you're not getting the response that you need, from people or from the universe. We have to sort of take into account the extraterrestrial part of our work as well, right? So yeah, so I think that's been my challenge, which is like, it's not really about goal setting for me. It's about how do I even get to that goal when the post just keeps shifting and I'm not shifting that post? It's just things around me that are shifting it without my knowledge or without my consent.
Yeah,
Hey, Shayna,
that's
sorry,
tough. Oh,
quick thought on that. I think one of the other challenges is really, I'd love for you to touch on the difference between goal setting and strategy versus the tactics, because I think that sometimes can also force that makes it feel like sometimes if we're changing tactics often that the goals change. So I'd love for you to add that.
yeah.
To the
One of my
conversation.
favorite quotes just in general is I forget the exact phrasing, it's like be set in your goals, but flexible about your methods. And so I think that and that totally comes into play, what you were just talking about of like, yeah, sometimes I'm not in control of how I'm going to set these goals. But what we can be in control of is the tactics. We can decide, okay, if I need to raise X amount of money, that means that I need to have 50 conversations with people. And of those 50 conversations, I need to get term sheets in front of 10 of them. And then I need to have these follow-up calls and warm introductions with 5 of them. And that's going to close me like 2 of them. And so when we also think about goals, we think about strategies, which is kind of the big picture, how we're going to get it done. And tactics are like day to day, what do we do to move the needle forward? And that kind of goes into what I'm talking about with tracking and measuring progress. Because you're right, if your goal involves other folks, then there's not so much, or you're not always going to be in control of that. But what you can control is your inputs towards the goal. You can control meeting folks, getting introductions, creating term sheets, having conversations. You can't control the decisions other people make, which is unfortunate and frustrating. And sometimes that does push our goals out further. But there are things that we can control. And so it's important to focus more on those things that we can control, those inputs, and doing what we can to at least get closer to what the goal is. Does that kind of get at what you were thinking, Katrina? Awesome. Does anyone else want to share how they track or measure their progress? Okay. So
I was going to share.
Yeah.
So for myself, I've started breaking things down to the micro a lot. So I have like I call it opportunity tasks, but basically I have that broken down. And then even within that, like I try to break it down even more. So I'm seeing like the progress of my action steps and then seeing how all those, even though everything's fluctuating constantly, like someone was saying about goals, I'm able to see a lot of what I'm getting done. And I also set up certain goals for certain timelines, but what I'm seeing is that like as being new in this, some of it wasn't quite realistic yet. And so now that I have the last few months of seeing like, okay, so I was able to get into the market in this time. Okay, I was able to find a specialty retail store, and it took this long. So I'm seeing more realistically of what I can do in that time. And then also knowing where I can start putting in, like you were saying, how many people do I need to reach out to actually get into space, and how often and how persistent.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, I mean, entrepreneurship is a learning experience, right? The entire time. People, I'm sorry to tell you this, but you will never be 100% confident in absolutely everything you do. You will always be learning and always be figuring things out. But as it's okay to start off with setting goals and being like, I have no idea if this is realistic. Who knows? Because you'll learn, you'll figure it out. You'll figure out, okay, so I had to have, I thought that I would need to have 10 conversations with 10 stores to get into 2 of them. But it turns out I had to have 15 conversations to get into 1 store. So now and you adjust the next quarter's goal and say, okay, I want to have 30 conversations and I'll try and get into 3 stores with that information. And so kind of that leads us into this next thing I want to talk about, which is KPIs, key performance indicators. So this is how we track progress towards an intended result. So just kind of on this example of getting into a store, one of the KPIs you might track is email outreach or phone call, cold outreach. So how many per week, how many stores are you reaching out to? And then another KPI you might track within that overarching goal of getting to stores is how many responses did you get? And then how many actual conversations did you have? And then how many proposals did you send? And how many follow-ups did you do? And really breaking it down into what are these things that tell us clearly that we are working towards the goal. Not necessarily that we are, going to, not that we're necessarily like, yes, this is, if I do X, Y will happen. But we know, okay, if I do these things, that gets me closer. And so tracking KPIs is really important. Does anyone currently track KPIs in any type of way? Okay.
Yeah, so just like when, I guess, do you mean like when you're setting your goals and having those critical indicators that are gonna positively show results through that? Or like
Yes,
what
I think
specific steps?
Yeah. So one of the ways to track these things too is you could do it in a spreadsheet. You can use a project management system, but I would highly recommend beginning to track KPIs. And similar to goal setting in general, you might not quite know what the right thing to track is at first. You might be tracking something and find, okay, these numbers don't actually correlate to progress. This is just like maybe a vanity metric. An example of that might be, you may start out tracking like Instagram followers, which is something that matters, for example, if you are selling on Instagram. However, if you're just using it as marketing or awareness, that might not be something that actually moves you towards your goals and might not be an important KPI to track. Whereas things like website visits or page clicks or contact forms submitted, those might be the type of things that actually tell you, oh, when this number goes up, that leads us to this goal that we want. And so I think what I would say as maybe a little piece of homework for y'all, something to work on over the next, week or so, is creating just a couple of KPIs that correlate towards the goals you want to reach. And doing that within a cohort is especially helpful because it gives you a level of accountability, right? Like if you share, hey, my number one KPI is how many cold emails I send per week, or my number one KPI is how many, clicks I get on my product page. Then you can all kind of help each other and you can say, hey, how did you do this week? Did you send out all those emails? No? Okay, what happened there? Was it a time thing? Was it a research thing? How can we help? And so I don't know kind of if you have a forum where you all communicate, if there's a Slack channel or something, but even if you just find like an accountability partner within your cohort, and each week you check in with each other and say, hey, here's the progress I made this past week. Here's my goal for next week. This is what I'm tracking. That can be really, really helpful for y'all. Because what gets measured gets managed. You've probably heard this. It's tossed around everywhere. It's attributed to Peter Drucker. It's such a broad, basic statement that many people could have said it. But when you're able to have KPIs and track them in a certain way, you can make changes. You can alter the path you're on. You can affect the different inputs that you have towards these goals. Before I get on to decision-making, are there any questions about goal setting? And we'll have time for questions at the end as well. So if there aren't, and you just want me to keep going, that's totally fine, but just wanted to check in and see if anybody had a question.
Yeah, I had a quick one. What's the best way to track the KPIs? Should we use like a project management system like you mentioned before? What do you suggest from like once we actually find these metrics?
So the best answer I can give for many questions of like, what is the best way to do this is, what is the way that you will actually do it? Right. I learned this. I used to run a gym before this. And people would ask us like, what's the best workout program? What's the best, nutrition protocol? The best one is the one you're going to do. So if you are already using a project management system like Trello or Monday or ClickUp or something, and you are in the habit of using it and you know how to use it and you check in on it daily, then it might be that. If you're not, then a Google Sheet works just as well. That's what we use at Blue Sky Partners. Our KPI dashboard is just a really pretty Google Sheet. And so whatever the thing you're actually going to use that's what's best for you.
Thank you.
All right. My next question for you all is, you wake up in the morning, it's Thursday, you probably have a million things on a to-do list. How do you decide what you work on? Anyone want to share how they make their decisions?
I can go.
Yeah.
Hi. I try to just keep everything on a list, like in order of importance, and then sort of number it. Like sales tax is due. That's more important than this other thing that I can maybe do tomorrow. And like I see clients too, so that's obviously number one because they make appointments. But I could be better for sure. And I'm definitely open to suggestions.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. That sounds great. Anybody else want to share how they decide what they need to work on?
Similarly, oh yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I prioritize based on my calendar. Like I work through my calendar every single day. So if I have something due, I'll like block some like time off. And that's when I decide, okay, this is when I should do this. So yeah.
Perfect. Love that. Someone else is going to chime in?
Yeah, kind of combination of both of those, but also I guess how other people are depending on whatever that to do is. And that's like, if they're both, neck and neck goal tasks, then that will be the last deciding point of like, okay, who depends on this right now? So
yep, absolutely. Those are all great things to think about. And what I heard from a few of you saying this in different ways is what moves the needle forward. That's what needs to get done, right? Whether we're talking about what moves the needle forward towards fundraising, what moves the needle forward towards sales, what moves the needle forward towards new clients, that's the thing we should be prioritizing. And one way to do that is using what's called the Eisenhower matrix. And this is a matrix that looks at things on scales of urgent to not urgent and important to not important. And so a couple of you touched on using this, though you may not know you use this framework, but the things that you should be doing are things that are both urgent and important. So that is tasks with clear deadlines and significant consequences if not completed in a timely fashion. So that could go to what was just said about who relies on this. If someone needs this thing from me, that has to take priority over something that is not needed by someone else to take their next step. Also, like Brittany said, things with, and when we look at things that are important, right, they may be things that move the needle, but they're not necessarily urgent. They don't need to happen today, this week, this month. And so what you want to do with that is schedule them. Figure out, okay, when does this have an impact, and schedule that for when you're going to do it. Things that are urgent, like things that are maybe a little bit on fire, but not necessarily important to your goals, can be delegated. And I know that for a lot of y'all, that is going to be the tough one because there's no one to delegate to. It is you. You are delegating it to your tomorrow self or your next week self. But think about, are there things that you can outsource, that you can ask someone else to do, that you can automate? Automation is another way to delegate, right? And so even if you are just one person, if there are, and then things that are not urgent and not important can be deleted. And so this is a tough one, I think, sometimes, because I know I do this. I can kind of distract myself from the urgent and important things by doing things that are not urgent and not important, but that are easier. And sometimes I don't want to get into like the big task, the big thing, writing the proposal or reviewing this thing. And so I do something that isn't really urgent and probably isn't important, but that is kind of like, that needs to be done at some point. Those are the things that we delete, that we just take off the list. And so this is one of many frameworks for how you can make decisions. But what I would encourage y'all to think about is that question of like, does this move the needle forward? Does this get me closer to the goal I set? Is this aligned with a key performance indicator that I've set? Are there any questions about decision-making before we start talking about time management? And then we'll kind of put it all together. All right. So as you probably realize in your time as an entrepreneur, as a professional, as a human, you can't do it all. That is just a simple fact of life. And so when it comes to time management, we need to find ways to manage our time, not only so that we get the things done that we need to get done for our business, but also so that we're a whole person, right? There are things that have to happen for us to feel full and fulfilled that are not necessarily related to work, but that are still very important. And so when we talk about scheduling, there are 10 most common mistakes according to calendar.com, very research-based and professional, knowing what you're doing. Focusing on the wrong work at a bad time. So that could be focusing on the not urgent, not important at a time when you have really low energy or really high energy and you choose to do something that's not important. Being unrealistic with time, so not having an understanding of how long things may take you. Inappropriate level of detail, so going too deep on something that maybe doesn't matter. Not adding buffers and breaks. This one is important. Scheduling yourself back to back is going to be really hard. On the one hand, it just makes it hard to switch our brain immediately from one thing to the next thing. Like I was in a board meeting before this call, and I left that board meeting like 10 to 15 minutes earlier than I needed to, so I could have time to kind of switch my brain off from that organization and the challenges we're facing and switch my brain on to this work that we're doing here. Building your schedule in isolation. So this means this is more for teams. You all kind of can build your schedule in isolation because you are teams of one for the most part. Not stacking meetings. So this is a personal preference, but I do prefer to kind of stack meetings. So like Tuesdays, I have a pretty heavy meeting day, and that's okay because I know that Thursdays, my day is wide open. So I may not be able to produce things on Tuesday, but I get a lot of calls done. I get with folks, I build a to-do list, and then I can start to execute on it later in the week. Being too rigid, trying to overschedule your day, not updating your schedule. So this is something that we're pretty serious about at Blue Sky, is if we put a time block on our calendar for like focused sales time, if we're not using that, we delete it. So that we look at the calendar and we can get an accurate reflection of what our day looks like. And then the last one is not using the right tools. So not using a calendar system that works for you, not using a project management tool that helps you, just not using the right things. The way that we like to think about this at Blue Sky is the first layer of this pyramid is ideas, right? We have all of these things that we can do, that we should do, that we want to do, but then we have to kind of move through these layers and see what actually filters up. So the first filter is what moves the needle, right? What is getting us towards the goal? What is a KPI? What are we tracking? And then if you've got ideas and they check that box, like, okay, yes, this does move the needle. The next filter is what should you do? So this means within your role, within your expertise, what is a task that you are the only one that can do it versus what is something that maybe you could delegate or you could automate. If something filters through there and it moves the needle and it is something you should be the one to do, the next question is, what can you do? What do you actually have the capacity and the bandwidth for? And then if you have that, then it gets made into part of your plan. It gets put in the calendar, it gets put in the project management system, and you find a way to work on that. But if you have all these ideas and projects and something doesn't make it through one of these filters, then it's time to kind of renegotiate with yourself and figure out, where should I put this? How should I put this into my plan? Is this actually important? So that is all I've got. I'm just now looking at the chat. I see sharing the Google template sheet. I actually can do that. Yes. So it'll take me a little bit to kind of like make it into a template, but yes, I can definitely share that. I'll also share these slides with Katrina as well, so she can post the slides, she'll share the template, and any other resources that come up in this conversation that I can share with you, we'll do that. That's all I've got. So open it up for questions now. But I would love to connect with you all. My LinkedIn is there, my email is there. Before we jump into questions, just a little plug for Blue Sky. We do full on like 4-hour workshops on calendar, like comprehensive calendar setting, on goal setting and KPIs, on setting a vision, mission, value for your organization, and on financial clarity for your organization that comes with a beautiful financial dashboard. And so those workshops are typically $4,000. Happy to give a discount for all of you in the fellowship and do them for $3,000. The other thing I'll offer to kind of sweeten that deal a little bit for you, because I know that for some of y'all that's still just not feasible, and that's okay. Typically we do those workshops one-on-one, but if there were like 2 of you that wanted to pair up and do a workshop, so you each paid $1,500 instead, we'd be open to that as well. So you can read more about the workshops online. I am more than happy also to connect one-on-one with y'all. If you want to talk about specific challenges you're having and want to get really deep on things, please reach out to me. If you're in Austin, I'd love to grab coffee with you. If not, Zoom is totally fine. So I will stop sharing my screen now, and I'm happy to answer any questions, give feedback, share resources, anything I can do to help the rest of the time we've got.
Since you are like being better with time management, do you find yourself saying no to more things that spontaneously come in your way?
Personally, it's something I need to get better at, but I am working on it. And yeah, there are things that we just have to say no to. And for me, the filter that I'm using currently where I'm at in my life is, does this help me advance professionally? Is this going to make me more money? And is this beneficial to Blue Sky Partners? And if it doesn't hit one of those boxes, then it maybe is going to be a no if I don't have the time for it. The other filter that's like the very last one is, will this be super fucking fun? That is the final filter. But if it doesn't hit those, then yeah, the answer is no. And I'm getting more comfortable saying no. Katrina and I were literally just talking about this before we opened this up for y'all, of just being able to say no. And you know what? No is a complete sentence. We do not have to provide justification. We do not have to provide reasons. We do not have to say why. No is a complete sentence. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. I see we've got a hand raised. Aswini, I hope I pronounced that right. Please tell me if I didn't.
Yeah, you mentioned, first of all, thanks for the reminders on this call. It's great to always get those pointers about getting organized, because it's just, as you mentioned, it's a constant, never ending game. I don't want to say battle game. That's fun, of trying to reach those goals, change your goals constantly. But you mentioned in the sessions that you guys offer, like financial planning part of it. Do you have any insights or thoughts on some strategies or guidelines on benchmarking those investments to take on when it comes to hiring and other costs that clearly are going to, take you further into the red as a company before you can get into that positive growth, stability of your business? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a tough one, right? You have to spend money to make money. And it's true. I am not as deeply involved in the financial side of things. What I can say is that our workshop does touch on that, and the dashboard does touch on that. And a lot of that has to do with kind of your own comfort levels too, of, are you comfortable making this initial upfront investment? And that also goes to KPIs, right? When we're going to spend money, we want to make sure we're getting a return on that investment. So if we want to bring someone on, what are the goals that that person has? What do they have to accomplish to make us back the money we spent and then some? And so a lot of it ties right back into goals and to what are tracking, and are we measuring the right things? So I know that's not totally what you were looking for, I don't think, but that is my thoughts.
Still a good reminder. No, thanks. Appreciate it.
Perfect. And we have another hand, Ayarpi.
Hi, yes, thank you so much for the presentation. I appreciate it. One thing that I took on this summer, which has been like super helpful, is obviously I can't afford to hire a staff, but I have been tapping into my family and friends this summer. So especially my son, he's 15. So one thing I did, and I think we all are not big delegators because we want to do everything and make sure it's perfect. But I gave him like a mailing list and an Excel spreadsheet and some Avery stamps. And I was like, can you help mail out postcards for me? And I'll pay you for it. And he's super excited, and he works 3 to 4 hours a day for me now. And I've been actually getting sales from the postcards he's been sending out. So again, it's like low hanging fruit. And then I've been asking like others to help as well. Like, hey, do you think you seem really good at this task? Like, is this something you can help take on like an hour a week for me? Something like that. So I'm just providing my feedback here. That's kind of been really helpful for me, is just asking people for help, which I don't know, for an entrepreneur, it seems like hard to do, but I feel like it's been really good for me this past 2 weeks, just asking family and friends for help.
Yeah, that is a great thing to do. And I think sometimes I forget at least, that like people want to help. And we know like the times that a friend has asked us for help and we're able to help them, it feels good. It's right. Like it's a selfish thing to help people too a little bit, but it feels good for us. So yeah, I would say take full advantage of that. If you know people that have certain skills that you need, see if they'll help you. Tell them you like buy them lunch one day or do something. But yeah, that's great. Connie.
Hi, okay, got on mute. I had a question about KPIs for marketing people. I don't know if you can kind of help with that because, you know, starting small, I was just hiring contractors, interns, anyone to do any sort of marketing. We do e-commerce, only DTC right now. I was thinking like marketing equals sales, coming from a sales background where all the KPIs were numbers of how much revenue did you bring in last week. I was having trouble finding appropriate KPIs for people in the social media marketing or any type of PR because it's non-linear, right? I mean, there's a lot of vanity metrics. You can have X number of followers, X number of shares, but what does that mean if it doesn't lead to sales? Like awareness is very vague. So I don't know if you had any.
Yeah, awareness is definitely vague, and the marketing stuff is definitely tougher, but marketing should lead to sales, right? That's why we do it. And so we're working with one of our clients right now. Actually, we just helped him hire a director of marketing. Because we identified that as the thing that will move the needle forward for him. And so one of the things that we're doing is we took a look at how do sales get made for him? Like, how do people find out about him? And then how can the marketing person contribute to that? And so you may not always be able to draw a direct line from sales to like an Instagram post. But if you're thinking about where do our sales get made, how do our people make decisions, and then how do we influence that, that'll give you a bit of a starting point, if that makes sense.
Okay, so it could be like number of email subscribers, number of like opt-ins or what have you. Got you.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And Katrina just said that we'll be diving into selling your product in a couple weeks. So awesome.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else from y'all? Anything else I can help with? Okay, Katrina, any housekeeper, anything you want to share?
I actually have one question. I know that so just to give a little bit of context, so as you all know, I'm transitioning out of the Naturally Austin role, and I'm actually also I've already taken the Naturally Network executive director role, so I'm doing that full time and doing Austin part time. So the thing that I'm doing right now is I'm working on a 3-year strategic plan. A lot of you all are kind of thinking, you know, at this stage, can I create a plan that's even beyond a year? And so, you know, the network is a 1-year-old organization, and I'm going to be building the 3-year strategic plan for it. In that sense, I understand those feelings because everything right now is really vague and lots of stakeholders, lots of opinions, lots of directions that we could go, right? So one of the things that I'm doing to kind of slow down before we really get into the planning is something that I like to call a listening tour. So I distribute surveys to different stakeholders. I have one-on-ones with lots of different types of people to really source feedback and then kind of, you know, digest and summarize that feedback that will then inform the strategic plan and but in that way, that really helps me understand what our role is in the marketplace. So like similarly to any of you, that is something like that feedback is super valuable. And oftentimes when we are in this like really early stage, we're often very just heads down, right? Like there's a fine line to walk between vision and kind of the product market fit for all the things that we are doing. So Shayna, I'd love for you to kind of touch a little bit more on that piece, because the planning is super important, but there's like this period of time that also there are a few things that you should really also do to lead up to the planning so that you know that the strategies and the goals that you're setting are going to support your ability to actually sell your product and build your brand. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about how you go about sourcing feedback and really understanding your own, you know, place in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you mentioned that you're doing that, because one of the things that Blue Sky Partners also does is strategic planning. We primarily work with nonprofits and help them with their strategic plans. And our phase one is exactly the thing that Katrina mentioned she's doing, which is sending out surveys, talking to partners. And what we're asking when we're doing that is we're trying to get a sense of what is the organization doing well? What is the organization well positioned to accomplish? Does the organization have a vision and mission that resonates with these partners and these folks in the space? By show of hands, how many of y'all have a vision and mission for your organization? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. All right. So most people do. Awesome. And so what you're trying to figure out when we're doing these, like this first kind of preparing, is, does this align with customers, with potential partners, with beneficiaries? Like, am I on the right track? Because the vision, right? Our vision is, what does the world look like when we've set out what we accomplish, what we set out to accomplish? It is big, it is dreamy, and we want to make sure that the things we're doing lead to that vision. The vision should be our North Star. And so when you're talking to folks and figuring out kind of where your place is, what you're trying to get at is, am I doing the right things? Like, what are the things I need to be doing? And continuously getting that feedback. Early on in a startup, it's customer discovery, but it shouldn't be something that ends when you have product market fit, right? You should always be talking to partners, always be talking to customers, always be figuring out where you fall in the marketplace. And that should inform how you make a plan and how you set goals. What do people want you to accomplish? How does that align with what you want to accomplish? Katrina, is that kind of what you were looking for? Perfect. Anything else that I can help with, that I can provide resources for, point you in the direction of?
Well, speaking of resources, what are some of your favorite, sort of project management tools that are accessible, that aren't going to cost $1,000?
Honestly, my favorite one, and has been for years, we don't actually use it at Blue Sky, but I love Trello. And I think it's maybe because I'm a sticky note person, and so Trello kind of looks like sticky notes, but it's free. It is so intuitive. It's easy to use, but it can also be pretty robust. You can do a lot with it, and you could customize it in a way that makes sense to you. So whether you're tracking your KPIs in Trello, or you're tracking your entire distribution system, you can do it all in Trello. And Trello is free. You can pay for some power-ups and other things, but it still is not going to be extremely expensive like some other ones are. If you're looking for something that's maybe a little more than Trello, at Blue Sky, we use ClickUp, which I believe is still free and really robust for free. And so that is another helpful one. And if you decide, I will say, I love project management tools so much. I love productivity tools. If you decide to use, or you want to try out Trello or ClickUp, and you're kind of like, how do I start this? Reach out, and I'd be more than happy to sit down with you and kind of do some templates with you and figure out how you can use it. But also don't knock Google Sheets. Google Sheets can do a lot for you.
Awesome. Any other last questions for Shayna?
Katrina, it's Duane. I just have a quick question for Shayna.
Yeah,
go ahead.
So really quickly, does Blue Sky happen to do work around really polishing or refining the vision, the values, the goals strictly for pitch decks or for business plans, investor packages?
So we don't do things specifically for that. It's something we can do, but it's not, we're not doing it with any clients right now. If that's something you're interested in though, one thing, reach out to me. I'll pass it along to our partners, and we'll see if that's something we feel like we're equipped to do. but we don't necessarily have like a workshop specifically for that. We do have workshops for vision, mission, values, and that will inform business planning and pitch decks the same way goal setting will. So yeah, I would say take a look at our website, reach out, tell us exactly what you're looking for and what you need, and we'll see if we're able to help.
Certainly. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. It was really good. I have your email address too as well. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so I will send Katrina my slides. I will templatize our KPI dashboard, put a couple examples in there for you, and I'll share that with Katrina as well. I'll also just make a note of the workshop offerings and the discount and the deal that we're happy to do with all of you. But please reach out to me, connect with me on LinkedIn. If you need help with anything, if you have questions, if you want to do a one-on-one, I'm more than happy to help.
And Shayna loves operations. Like that is how her brain works. So don't be afraid to reach out because she likes it.
I do.
Thank you so much for your time, Shayna. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Have a great day, y'all.
Thanks, y'all. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Oh, before y'all, it's too late. It's okay. I'll just remind everyone that we have our brew crew next Friday is in person. So it'll be nice to see everyone. It's been a while. Okay, awesome. Have a great day.